Good morning, everybody. Mike's MMA Picks here with your Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown show for UFC 289, where we are up in Vancouver, Canada, in the Great White North. Looking forward to this UFC event. We have 11 fights. There's a title fight at the top of this card, and we also have the People's Main Event, Charles Oliveira taking on Beneil Dariush. Looking forward to a number of bouts on this specific card. Only 5 out of 11 fights on the card are currently favored to end inside the distance. I think we may see potentially more finishes here. So looking forward to it. Cannot wait for this one to get started. And by the way, let's kick things off in the women's strawweight division we've got a matchup between Diana Belbita and Maria Oliveira. Now, both of these fighters, similar records. We've got Belbita coming in 14-7. They have a mutual opponent in Gloria De Paula. Tough matchup here for both of these fighters. Belbita, interesting. She will have the backing of the Canadian crowd in this matchup. She looks like she's going to come in with a little bit more volume here against a Maria Oliveira, who is a bit of a spaz out there. She will throw caution to the wind. Belbita's been submitted 4 separate times. I do not believe that Oliveira is live for a submission victory here. Belbita should be trading on the feet. Oliveira potentially could end up in a striking affair in this matchup. I'll be picking Belbita to win, but I am going to be avoiding this matchup with the from the betting window perspective. I believe there are much better matchups up and down this fight card. Oliveira is our co-main event of the evening between Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira. I am extremely ecstatic about that specific matchup. We'll get there in a minute. But let's get to the second fight of the night, where we have a short notice replacement in Steve Erceg coming in as the plus 225 underdog. Astro Boy looking to make his UFC debut here against a formidable opponent in David Dvorak. David Dvorak, not to be confused with Radek Dvorak, former NHL superstar. David Dvorak, minus 265 at the betting window. This line has come down from, I believe Dvorak was in the -3 and minus high 300s at one point. Dvorak, he can do it all out there, and he's faced legitimate competition. Erceg is going to be the longer, lankier fighter who has a noodly frame. Erceg is going to need to close distance to have success here. And I have some questions about Erceg's gas tank in this matchup. Not sure if he's going to be able to make it across the finish line against David Dvorak, who is a well put together fighter coming off of a shoulder injury. I believe it was a Kimura attempt that Manel Cap had him in, and that caused some serious damage to David Dvorak. Dvorak had to take a few months away from the sport to rehabilitate and get himself ready for this matchup. Though Dvorak has a full camp here, not specifically for Erceg, but he is coming in with the better gas tank. He is coming in with the more crisp striking, and also he's much more fleet of foot. We must mention the footwork here. If Erceg ends up being in this fight, the longer it goes, I could see Erceg becoming a stationary target on the feet and ending up becoming a punching bag the later this fight goes. So in my professional opinion, Steve Erceg should sell out and try to land some takedowns here if possible, even catch Dvorak in a transition. But I'll be rolling with the favorite here. I believe that David Dvorak is going to walk away with the victory. I'm not going to be laying the minus 265. Erceg, he has the potential to come alive in this spot early. But I'll be picking Dvorak, and I think that he could get a late stoppage finish on the feet. We've got a number of comments here in the comment section. Good morning, Evan. Welcome aboard. Great to be here. Although on paper, this doesn't seem like the best of cards, Canada never fails to disappoint. Interesting. Let's see. We've got interesting. Yeah. Thank you for. I'm a big Jimmy Buffett fan. He's not touring this summer. So heart goes out to Jimmy Buffett at this time as he recovers from recent hospitalization. We'll get back to the fights right now. We've got a featherweight matchup between Kyle Nelson and Blake Bilder. Bilder is looking to work on the momentum here that he's got going. Solid fighter, willing to throw caution to the wind, has no qualms engaging in firefights, and that could potentially cost him against Kyle Nelson, who's a heavy hitter. Kyle Nelson, though, he's a fighter who, it's interesting, he doesn't necessarily fight to his strengths, and his strengths are throwing caution to the wind and catching opponents. But if he's not able to do that, he doesn't have a great gas tank. Nelson doesn't have great wrestling, and he does not have great defensive tendencies. Also, Nelson, you watch and you listen to his interviews, he never lacks any confidence, no matter what happens to him inside of the octagon. I've pointed this out a number of times in the past where he's gone to the PI and he's come back and said that he has some of the best numbers that the PI has ever seen at featherweight, and that gives him a lot of confidence. But that doesn't necessarily win you fights inside of the UFC's octagon. And I know he's fighting at home, so he'll have the crowd on his side. But we loaded up on Duho Choi against Kyle Nelson, and that ended up ending in a draw because of a point deduction there. I'll be picking Blake Bilder here, but Bilder has to be aware that there'll be some heavy heat headed towards him in this matchup. And Nelson is going to, well, you know what? I'm not going to say going to. He's likely to throw heavy heat. Nelson, though, he's fought such a conservative fight in recent bouts. He's forgotten what's brought him into this into the octagon. He's a fighter who doesn't necessarily fight to his strengths. He's gone back to becoming a wrestler, and that's not who he is. He's not going to find success inside of the octagon at that with that strategy. So the gas tank's going to probably come into play here. I'll be picking Bilder to win via late stoppage. I think that a TKO victory in round 3 is on the docket here. So keep an eye out for Bilder via TKO stoppage in round 3. Check out that line. Nelson always live for a knockout, though. That's just something to be aware of. Now, we have a 35-year-old featherweight in Ayman Zahabi, who is coming in as the plus 105 underdog here, and he's taking on Arichi Lang, who... Interesting stuff here. You've seen Lang in other fights, and he's taken a loss to one of the worst fighters in the flyweight division, who's no longer with the promotion. In Molina, he's a fighter who is going to throw caution to the wind. He's going to empty his tank and go for it. And you love to see fighters who do that. And Zahabi is more of a counter striker who's going to sit back, and we saw against Tercios. By the way, Ricky Tercios, when is Tercios going to be back in action? Zahabi came through in that spot. I'm leaning towards the underdog, primarily because of Lang's his aggressiveness. I think that could potentially come back to haunt him. The problem here for Zahabi, though, is his gas tank at 35 years of age. Is it going to hold up down the stretch? I'll be picking Zahabi here to to come through as an underdog. I do not have a play on this bout, primarily because I don't trust Zahabi's gas tank at 35 years of age, especially if Lang's going to be pushing a pace. Arichi Lang, 29 years of age. I know that the 24-9 record is a bit deceiving because you look up and down his record. You wonder how many of those bouts were legitimate. And Zahabi is a fighter who we've known through the years has been notorious for fighting well in the gym, but when it comes to performing under the bright lights, hasn't necessarily performed to the best of his ability. So I'll be picking Zahabi here. No play, but I think that there is some value on the underdog in this matchup. Before we get to the next bout, let's just say good morning to the folks here. Donnie, good morning. Thank you for chiming in. Also, yes, Charles Oliveira is 0-4 inside of Canada, but that's matchup dependent. Here we go. We've got good morning. Great to see you. Hey, Lou. How are you, sir? Good to see you this morning. Let's get Lou's comment up there. We are going to get back to this breakdown. We've got Miranda Maverick taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. Jasmine coming in as the plus 220 underdog, the self-proclaimed women's Canadian GSP is back inside of the octagon. Now, Jasudavicius, 34 years of age. She's going to look to grapple here against Miranda Maverick, who is a minus 260 betting favorite. She was in the minus 340s, minus 320s or so. I have not touched this fight. This is one of my staples here for the past year and a half. I've avoided low-level women's mixed martial arts bouts, and I'm going to continue to do so. It's served me well, but I want to wish everybody out there I hope their tickets cash if they are playing low-level women's mixed martial arts. I have no play on this bout, but the lean here is Miranda Maverick. Jasmine Jasudavicius, she is, what can you say? She's going to come to grapple. She's going to have the hometown crowd behind her. Miranda Maverick has shown chinks in her armor as far as the grappling pedigree. I saw her on my timeline. There were some tweets that popped up where she was defending herself in regards to her wrestling pedigree. And it seems like the Blanchfield fight may have lit a fire under her. You never actually know until the fighters get inside of the octagon. And that's something I have to mention here, is that sometimes you have a few months between fights, and these fighters can go back to the drawing board and shore up their games, especially in women's mixed martial arts, where the game has not evolved to the level of some of their men's counterparts. So I'll be picking Miranda Maverick, but no play on this bout. And I do see this fight. I do see this going over 2.5. I'm not one to necessarily play overs, and that's a strength that I'm continuing, an area of improvement I'm continuing to work on. But I'll be honest, when I watch fights, you have your eyes on the clock, and it's a very different mindset than a bloodthirsty fan who's looking for finishes. So to actually root for a fight to go over 2.5, it's just another skill that one has to continue to develop. But I'm leaning Miranda Maverick, and I think that the over here is likely to hit, but I'm not going to play it at massive juice line. So Miranda Maverick is going to be the pick. Now, this is a fight I've had circled for a while. It's on the fridge. Looking forward to this one. Nasruddin Imavov, coming off of ankle surgery in February, and he's taking on Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis, who we know is a teammate of Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland recently beat Nasruddin Imavov in a bout that was, I believe, light heavyweight, 205 pounds, on very, very short notice. Originally, Nasruddin Imavov was supposed to face Kelvin Gastelum. We saw how that played out. Sean Strickland came in off the couch, was able to dispose of Nasruddin Imavov. And frankly, that could potentially have been a humiliating loss for Imavov. And he vowed to stay busy outside of the octagon and inside of the octagon, working on addressing some of his deficiencies. But the issue here, I have Chris Curtis, the much shorter fighter who starts slow, who doesn't have great footwork, who's a plodding fighter. Imavov starts hot, starts strong, is going to have significant height advantage here, is the much straighter puncher who also possesses a kicking game, and who's going to be landing the takedowns here as well. Imavov has the potential to, but Chris Curtis, he's been a stone wall back there with his takedown defense. So I believe that this fight is likely going to play out on the feet, that Imavov is going to come out, pick Chris Curtis apart for the better part of 2+ rounds. And then that's when this bout could potentially become very sweaty. When Chris Curtis gets frustrated, which we've seen happen many times before, and Chris Curtis could walk forward, not respect Imavov's power, and try to just close distance and land haymakers like he did against Kelvin Gastelum towards the end of that bout. Now, we cashed on Kelvin Gastelum as an underdog last time out against Chris Curtis, and we've seen Chris Curtis, he's as developed as he's going to get. This is a fighter who I believe has 40 or so professional bouts under his belt, and I believe at -130, which we locked him up. I posted this play on Twitter and locked it in at my betmma.tips profile. By the way, all of my plays in 2023 have been, most of them have been free, and I've continued to put out free content throughout the weeks. So the play here was Nasruddin Imavov at -130, and it's just a matter of Imavov's gas tank down the stretch. Is he going to be able to make it across that 15-minute mark? And I think that he will likely have 2 rounds banked when the third round starts. So if you're giving me a fighter who's up 2 rounds headed into the third, and you're giving me favorite or close to evens, -130, I'll take that most days. So Imavov is going to be the play here. And now we've got another interesting matchup. But before we get to that, let's say good morning to Pepe. Welcome aboard, sir. Pleasure to have you. Lou, yes, that was a fridge-worthy fight, Maynard. I hope that folks have invested in their espresso machines out there. Evan's on your fridge. Are you going to war, Sylvia and Evan? Wow. By the way, let's get back to this matchup here. We've got a middleweight bout between an aging veteran in Eric Anders taking on Marc-Andre Barriault. Marc-Andre Barriault sitting at -135, and you have Eric Anders, who's now 36 years of age. He's coming off of a win over Kyle Daukaus, where Daukaus felt the power of Eric Anders and wilted rather quickly, I might add. And that cashed with relative ease, those who are on Eric Anders there. Eric Anders, though, still looks very stiff, upright. This is a fighter who is nearing the tail end of his respective career, and he's taking on a Marc-Andre Barriault who he's called the power bar. He's been thrashed by certain opponents where he's been outmatched. He's been knocked out by Chitty, and we've seen him taste big power. He's also 0-2 inside of the octagon in Canada. So it's not like the Canadian crowd is going to lift him and push him towards victory here. So he's got to do it for himself here. And Barriault, he has the potential to pull away in this fight, the second and third rounds. I do have concerns, though. Eric Anders, if he's able to get this fight against the fence and land takedowns, Barriault, I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be able to have the game to fend Anders off. Anders is an athletic specimen despite being a elder statesman here. I'll be picking Barriault, though, in this matchup. I think the longer this fight goes, Barriault's going to find his rhythm and separate himself here. Although also Eric Anders, I know he's bounced around from camp to camp through the years, but I have concerns late in his career doing this, making move after move. I remember he was with Walt Harris at one point, and then took off to Fight Ready, and now he's bounced around to another camp. So I mean, I'm leaning. I have no play on this bout, but the lean is Marc-Andre Barriault. I have a feeling this is going to be a very, very close matchup. So Marc-Andre Barriault's going to be the pick. Two tough fighters. Let's see. The free content is much appreciated. No problem. No problem. Wow. There's some heat building up in the comment section here between Evan and Sylvia, Pepe Sylvia. I hope they're able to settle their differences and that cooler heads prevail. But in the one of the main card matchups I've had circled on my fridge at home here is Dan Ige versus Nate Landwehr. You want to talk about getting the fannies out of the seats. You want to talk about the octagon being illuminated and punches landing and potentially blood spilling on the octagon floor. This is one of the bouts that has the potential for that to happen. Nate Landwehr, lots of scar tissue there. Plus 220 underdog taking on Dan Ige at minus. Dan Ige is coming in at minus 260. One of the plays that I've had posted at my betmma.tips profile and also posted on Twitter for free was Dan Ige at minus 225. He has a number of paths to victory here, namely Nate Landwehr's willingness to engage in warfare and throw caution to the wind. We saw against David Onama, who almost put him out of there, turned his back on Onama, felt the crowd behind his back, and it almost seemed like Landwehr felt invincible out there. And Onama almost won that fight. Let's be honest with ourselves. He let Onama back in that fight, and Onama has a lot of warts to his game. We've seen Landwehr knocked out multiple times in the past. Austin Lingo performed well in the first round against Nate Landwehr, and Danny Ige, he has faced significant competition. He's a fighter who is going to fight hard for your money every time out. He has a solid gas tank. He's an intelligent fighter, and he's still coming into his own. Nate Landwehr, 35 years of age. I'm rolling with Dan Ige here. I see the potential for him to end this fight via finish. He also, Ige, one of his kryptonite sometimes is that the ground game is an issue for him if he gets put on his back. And if Nate Landwehr is able to survive and this fight ends up hitting the third round, I could see a scenario, let's be honest with ourselves, there are no certainties in this game, that I could see a scenario that Nate Landwehr ends up dragging this fight deep and he's still there. And that could get potentially hairy, especially if you're risking 2.5 units here. But I do believe that Dan Ige is the much more crisp striker with the heavier punches, with a killer instinct, and the way he plants his feet and throws those hammers. I have to lean with Dan Ige here. I'll be picking him to win. Now, this is a fascinating matchup here between Mike Malott and Adam Fugitt. Adam Fugitt, the last fighter to make it to the scales at the weigh-ins yesterday, made the weight, comes in as the plus 180 underdog. Lanky fighter, and he's taking on Mike Malott, who it's almost as if Mike Malott's carrying this card on his shoulders. He's acting as if that's the case. Mike Malott is going to fight hard for your money. He will finish fights, most of his fights end very early. And Adam Fugitt is a fighter who he continues to survive. He's a fighter who will not go away. Even against Morales, he took the kitchen sink and kept coming forward, and eventually met his maker there at the end of that fight. But Mike Malott, I suspect he'll be landing, and he's going to come in completely dialed in here. The problem is, though, is Adam Fugitt going to be able to weather this early storm? Because if he does, then Adam Fugitt has the potential to drag this fight into deep, deep water. Good morning, Joe. Thank you for tuning in. We have a number of folks here who are joining us. So the situation I find myself here is how do we play this fight? Do we play Mike Malott inside the distance? Do we play an over 1.5 here? Do we play fight doesn't go the distance? Do we play the under 2.5? I think, considering all variables here, that the under 2.5 is you're saving almost a whole dollar basically on your line for 2.5 minutes. And Mike Malott should be landing often here. I believe that Malott could potentially gas himself out. And I think the round and a half mark is when really things are going to come to fruition here, and a finish will end up being on the table here. So I'll be picking Malott inside the distance, but it would not surprise me one bit to see Malott burn himself out. So fascinating matchup. And speaking of fascinating matchups, let's get to the co-main event of the evening, my brothers, where we have Charles Oliveira taking on Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush is someone who I faded last time out against Gamrot, and I was very impressed with Dariush. He's won me some money throughout the years, but also he's lost me some money as well. I was on him against Alexander Hernandez, and we saw him get knocked out there. We also saw him in a situation against Barboza where he ate a knee right up the middle, and that oh man, that one hurt. But besides those two instances, Dariush has been an extremely intelligent fighter inside of the octagon who is deceiving. He will fight extremely hard for your money. He has a great gas tank. When he's winning a third round against Gamrot, that says a lot. I have altered my perception of Beneil Dariush in recent years, in that there's almost a switch that gets flipped sometimes in fights where he throws caution to the wind. It's almost like he forgets where he is. He gets lured into firefights occasionally. Drakkar Klose did it to him and others. And he's mentioned it in interviews where he doesn't listen to his corner sometimes, and he knows he should be listening to his corner. So my perception has changed in regards to Dariush being an intelligent fighter, but when fire meets fire, he's willing to trade, and he sometimes he comes out the other side more often than not, which is impressive. Now let's talk about Charles Oliveira, who this line has widened and widened, plus 135 for Oliveira, which, I mean, a lot of folks will say there's value on Oliveira. And yes, the guy comes out like hell on wheels. He will go for the finish. And I've watched his entire career take place and evolve. I remember when he was a young, spry 145er, and he was in there against he even fought Frankie Edgar and others throughout his career. Man, Oliveira he's one of those fighters who, you listen to his entrance, you listen to the crowd, everybody loves Oliveira. And I've been waiting for some Oliveira money to come in here. It seems like it's starting to happen at some books. I was wondering how wide this line was going to potentially get, and we saw Dariush hit minus 160 at some books. I personally favor Beneil Dariush in this matchup. I think that Oliveira is going to have to sell out for the finish here. It looks like this weight cut potentially, I know he made weight, but he does not look great here. And you look at how many professional fights he's had under his belt. I have concerns if this fight ends up hitting the second or third round, that Oliveira may potentially gas himself out here. And then you talk championship rounds, fourth and fifth round. That this bout should have been booked for 5 rounds, my brothers. I wish this bout was booked for 5 rounds, because how would the line change? I think that we would see Dariush blow out to a minus 200 or so favorite. But we have 3 rounds to work with. We have 15 minutes to work with. And it would not surprise me to see Dariush blanket Oliveira here. And Oliveira is going to be throwing up submission attempts from his guard. Will try to sell out. I think that Dariush is going to be the much more intelligent fighter here. And it's just a matter of, is he going to get sucked into a firefight again? I'll be picking Dariush to win. But there are many layers to this fight. That's one of the reasons I'm spending a few minutes digging into it rather just giving you out a quick pick here. I want to do this fight justice by breaking it down properly. So Oliveira, yes, he's live here for an early finish, but I believe Dariush has what it takes to win this fight. And I love to see Master Rafael Cordero in there pushing the buttons for Dariush, and he will have him ready to go. So I'll be picking Benny Dariush, and I suspect I'll end up with a play on Dariush at some point before the octagon door closes. Was hoping for a better number here, just watching the way these lines are moving, but I'll be picking Benny Dariush in this matchup. Let's see, we've got some additional comments here. Right. Thank you for your insight. I appreciate you. I've noticed our numbers have continued to go up and go up. And the key here, though, is the betting results, right? That's an important aspect of it. One thing I have to mention here, and I've been harping on this for a while now, is you want to pick your spots. You don't want to make the mistake of risking too much of your bankroll. And by bankroll, I mean a unit being a percentage of your bankroll on any specific matchup or an event. So when you're tailing someone and when you're doing research, or if you're putting out plays, just realize that folks may be potentially tailing you, and that if you are advising somebody to risk a third or 20, 30 plus units on your one slate of fights, that is a recipe for someone to lose their backside and potentially is a recipe for disaster. So tread with caution. That's one of the reasons I personally have been my 2023, the most I've risked on any specific matchup is 2.5 units. And in this spot, you just have to tread with caution. And I know scared money don't make money, right? But also pick your spots. So that's one thing I'll say. Let's get to the main event of the evening, where we have Amanda Nunes taking on Irene Aldana. Now, Amanda Nunes, interesting. She comes back against Juliana Pena, and really showed out in her last fight. Had a point to make, and she did a number there, and we saw what she's capable of when she's inspired, when she is ready to perform. And what's interesting here, Irene Aldana is actually the older fighter in this matchup. I know they were born in the same year, but Irene Aldana looked shredded on the scales, plus 270 underdog. Aldana has the ability we've seen against Caitlin Vieira, can land a seminal blow on her opponent. And Amanda Nunes, in my eyes, I see Amanda Nunes getting back to the grappling here inside of the larger octagon, trying to close distance to get to Aldana's hips. That is going to be something that she'll need to do. And Aldana, you watch the Holly Holm fight, the way she was unable to close distance, being the aggressor. It was interesting. It almost seemed rudimentary how someone would not know the correct way to cut off their opponent and close distance. She couldn't do it. It was incredible at this stage in the game. So Aldana, she has a puncher's chance in women's mixed martial arts, but that would be it here for me. Amanda Nunes, I believe, is the rightful favorite. Am I going to go out of my way at the end of her career when we know that what does she have to fight for besides her legacy? Am I going to lay over my minus 300 on Nunes? Not necessarily. I think that she's shown that she's been a bit of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at times in her career, and I don't think Aldana is the one to upset her here. I would love to see a Valentina Shevchenko Nunes trilogy. I'll be picking Amanda Nunes here. I think that she has the potential to get it done inside the distance. And I wish that we had Benny Dariush versus Charles Oliveira for 5 rounds. That's what I wish, if you want to be me to be completely honest. So the pick's going to be Amanda Nunes inside the distance. I haven't made a play on it, but I'll be enjoying this fight, watching it from the comfort of my home. And I want to wish everybody a phenomenal fight day. Let's see. We've got I appreciate you, Pepe. Pick your spots. Take one opportunity at a time. We haven't come this far only to come this far, right? So let's get after it, my brothers. Want to wish everybody a fantastic fight day. We're going to cut this breakdown in under 37 minutes, 11 fights. Cheers to you and yours. Go get what's yours. Dominate your Saturday. Let's do this, my friends. Let's go. Let's go.